The old house stood on a hill, shrouded in a perpetual gloom. The wind whistled through the eaves, carrying with it the whispers of forgotten secrets. Secrets that clung to the house, obscuring its history in a veil of mystery. I had always felt a strange pull towards this particular house, an inexplicable urge to discover its mysteries. Perhaps it was the stories I heard from the locals, tales of strange occurrences and unexplained disappearances. Or maybe it was the house itself, its crumbling bricks seeming to call to me. Whatever the reason, I found myself drawn to the house. Little did I know my curiosity would lead me down a path of danger. A path where the line between reality and nightmare blurred, and the only guide I had was my own intuition. My name is Ava, and I've always been a dreamer, a seeker of forgotten lore and hidden truths. The old house on the hill was just the kind of mystery I looked for, a puzzle begging to be solved. I had read about it in old books. The house had been empty for decades, its last occupants vanishing without a trace. Some said it was a family curse, a malevolent entity that haunted its halls. Others spoke of a hidden fortune lost within the house's labyrinthine depths. Whatever the truth, the house held a powerful pull. My friends, David and Mary, shared my thirst for adventure. Together, we planned an expedition to the house, a chance to explore its secrets and perhaps uncover the truth behind its reputation. We were young and foolish, our excitement overshadowing any sense of danger. We had no idea what awaited us within the house's walls. The day of our expedition was cold and gray. A thick fog rolled in. The fog seemed to amplify the sense of foreboding that hung over the house, like a shroud. Despite the unsettling atmosphere, our excitement remained high. We arrived at the foot of the hill, our breath visible in the cold air. The house loomed above us. A shiver ran down my spine as I gazed up at the imposing structure. A sense of unease, a prickling at the back of my neck, told me this was no ordinary place. We pressed on, our footsteps muffled by the thick dead leaves that covered the ground. The air grew colder as we approached the house. Despite my growing unease, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that unseen eyes were tracking our every move from the shadows. We reached the front door, its paint peeling and cracked. The brass knocker hung at an awkward angle, as if loosened by time and neglect. David stepped forward and gave it a tentative knock. The sound echoed through the fog, swallowed by the oppressive silence that surrounded us. There was no answer, only the rustling of leaves in the wind. David tried the doorknob. It turned, and the door creaking open as if in protest. A musty odor wafted out, the smell of decay and forgotten memories. We hesitated on the door, a sense of anticipation mingled with trepidation. The house seemed to hold its breath, waiting for us to enter. We stepped inside, our eyes struggling to adjust to the dim light that filtered through the grimy windows. The air was dusty. The house was eerily silent, the only sound our own breathing and the creaking of the floorboards beneath our feet. Every step seemed to echo through the house, amplified by the oppressive silence. The interior of the house was a labyrinth of darkened rooms and winding corridors. Cobwebs hung from every corner, draping the furniture as well. I felt a chill despite the layers of clothing I wore, as if a cold hand had gripped my heart. We moved cautiously through the house, our flashlights cutting through the gloom. Every room seemed to hold a story, a fragment of the past frozen in time. A child's doll lay abandoned on a dusty rocking horse, its porcelain face cracked and staring. A half-finished meal sat on a table, the food now rotten and covered in cobwebs. In the parlor, we discovered a fireplace. Above the mantel hung a portrait of a family, their faces obscured by grime. I felt a strange connection to the portrait, as if the eyes of the family followed our every move. The feeling was unsettling, a prickle of unease that danced along my skin. As we ventured deeper into the house, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The shadows seemed to lengthen and twist around us, as if endowed with a life of their own. The silence was broken only by the creaking of the house and the occasional groan of settling timbers. Yet, I could have sworn I heard whispers, Faint voices carried on the wind. We reached a long hallway, its walls lined with portraits of stern-faced individuals. Their eyes seemed to follow us as we passed, their expressions unchanging in the flickering light of our flashlights. A cold draft snaked down the hallway, sending shivers down my spine. I felt a sudden urge to turn back, a sense of foreboding that tightened its grip on my chest. "Did you hear that?" Mary whispered, her voice barely audible above the creaking of the house. I shook my head, unsure if I had heard anything or if it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But I couldn't deny the growing sense of unease, the feeling that we had stumbled into something we didn't understand. The hallway led to a grand staircase, its wooden banisters intricately carved with scenes of mythical creatures. The stairs creaked under our weight as we ascended, the air growing colder with each step. The upper floor was shrouded in an oppressive darkness, the only light emanating from our flashlights. I felt a tightness in my chest, a sense of claustrophobia that made it difficult to breathe. We came to a landing, a narrow corridor branching off to the left and right. The air was thick with dust, the silence broken only by the sound of our own breathing. I felt a growing sense of disorientation, as if the house itself were playing tricks on us. The layout seemed to shift and change, the corridors twisting and turning like a labyrinth. "I think we're lost," David said, his voice betraying a hint of nervousness. I had to agree. The house seemed to be playing games with us, its layout defying logic and reason. The feeling of being watched intensified. I couldn't shake the feeling that we had stumbled into something dangerous, something that wanted us gone. We pressed on, determined to find our way out of the house. But with every turn, the halls seemed to stretch on endlessly. The air grew colder, the silence heavier. I felt a prickling at the back of my neck. As we rounded a corner, I caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of my eye. A fleeting shadow that darted across the end of the hallway, disappearing into the darkness before I could get a clear look. My heart pounded in my chest, a surge of adrenaline coursing through my veins. I wasn't sure what I had seen, but I knew it wasn't anything good. "Did you see that?" I asked, my voice a hushed whisper. David and Mary shook their heads, their faces pale with apprehension. They hadn't seen the shadow, but they could feel the change in the atmosphere. We quickened our pace, our fear propelling us forward. The house seemed to close in around us, its shadows lengthening and twisting as if trying to ensnare us. The air grew thick with a palpable sense of dread, a feeling that we were running out of time. I could feel the cold breath of the unseen presence on my neck, its presence growing stronger with every step we took. We stumbled through the corridors, our flashlights casting erratic beams that danced across the walls. The portraits of the stern-faced individuals seemed to mock us with their unchanging expressions, their eyes following our every move. I felt a sense of desperation rising within me, a primal urge to escape the suffocating confines of the house. The shadows seemed to close in around us, their movements growing bolder as our fear intensified. I could hear the whisper of voices now, faint and indistinct, but undeniably present. They seemed to be closing in on us, their whispers growing louder with every passing moment. We were trapped in a nightmare, and the only way out was to find the exit before it was too late. We burst into a large room, its high ceilings disappearing into the shadows. A grand fireplace dominated one wall, its hearth cold and empty. In the center of the room stood a large table, its surface covered in a thick layer of dust. Scattered across the table were old books, their pages yellowed and brittle. As I stepped closer to the table, I noticed a glint of metal reflecting in the beam of my flashlight. It was a locket lying open on the table. Inside the locket was a faded photograph of a young woman, her eyes staring out at me with a haunting sadness. I recognized her from the portrait in the parlor, the missing mother of the family. Suddenly, the whispers intensified, swirling around us like a vortex of unseen energy. The air grew colder, the shadows dancing with a malevolent glee. I felt a cold hand grip my shoulder, its icy touch sending a jolt of fear through my body. I spun around, but there was nothing there. only the whispering shadows and the oppressive silence. We fled the house, our hearts pounding in our chests. The fog had lifted, revealing a star-studded sky. The fresh air filled my lungs, but the chill of the house lingered in my bones. We didn't speak as we hurried down the hill, our minds still reeling from the encounter. We never returned to the house on the hill. The experience left an indelible mark on our souls, a chilling reminder of the unseen forces that lurk beneath the surface of reality. The whispers still haunt my dreams, a constant reminder of the danger we faced. The house taught me a valuable lesson: trust your gut. The unease I felt from the moment we arrived was a warning, a primal instinct screaming at me to turn back. But I ignored it, blinded by my curiosity and thirst for adventure. I learned that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones we cannot see, the ones that whisper in the shadows and play tricks on our minds. And the only weapon we have against them is our own intuition.